is that the Buddha didn't like to entertain speculative views because they didn't directly have to do with understanding dukkha and alleviating it. That's absolutely true. However, there's a little bit more to it, or there can be, in this sutta. And I wanted to, this month, expand on something I kind of opened the door to last month, which was Vipassana meditation, Vipassana as an idea. And I think I indicated last month that if you study this issue and read different people from Thailand and Burma and Sri Lanka, and read some of the commentaries that come after the time of the Buddha, and then read the Pali Suttas and everything, you'll find that there are differing ideas about this. For example, is Vipassana even something that can be deliberately practiced, or is it just insight when it naturally occurs? These ultimate, profound questions about self and the world. And true to form, the first part of the answer, as Vajragota puts these questions to the Buddha, the Buddha puts them aside basically in every case, and in the end, the Vajragota says, well, aren't there any speculative views that the Buddha entertains? Don't you ever think about speculative views? And the Buddha said that he's put those aside, and he gives the standard true to form explanation about how these don't directly impact the understanding of suffering or its alleviation, which, as I say, is everybody here knows that probably. But then he goes on to, after this final question is put to him, don't you have any speculative views? And I'm going to paraphrase now, but he basically says, no, because the Tathagata doesn't see things that way. The things that you're talking about, they involve the idea of a self and a world, the subject-object relationship upon which is built this whole story of somebody existing someplace in time, doing something. So all of these questions have to do with that, and he basically says all of that is an illusion. What a Tathagata sees is how the five aggregates, the five khandhas, come to be, exist and pass away. So he's deconstructing the basic components of our storyline of self, a body and a mind that exist in some unified way in a world that has some continuing, ongoing existence in time, and our relationship to that, all our different narratives and so on. He's basically saying all that's an illusion, a convention. And having put those things aside, he's no longer occupied with thinking of things like that. There's another sutta, and I couldn't find where it was. I looked a little bit this morning. But there's another sutta where the same general narrative takes place, except it's with Ananda. And instead of the Buddha himself giving his answer, Ananda gives the answer that his teacher, the Buddha, gives on this question. And more or less it follows the same framework, except at where the part is where the Buddha said that he sees things in terms of the five aggregates, how they exist and pass away. Ananda says that the Tathagata sees the six senses and their fields. So, as many of you know, there are the five bodily senses that everybody knows. And then there's the mind, which in this context is viewed as another sense organ that takes in mental objects, the internal objects of experience, thoughts and feelings and so on, that can't be directly linked to the eye, the ear, the nose, tongue, and sense of touch, smell. So, if we're looking at kind of a framework within which to investigate our experience in this deconstructive way, the five aggregates does seem to be by far the most popular form of this that's given in the suttas. However, it is also possible to do it in terms of living within our present moment experience and seeing that there are these 6 different aspects to it, 6 different doors through which data comes into our experience that don't necessarily require any kind of permanent, ongoing unity between them. They're isolated moments of experience that arise and pass away. So the reason I bring that up is that to even talk about, we have an hour today, to even talk about the five aggregates for people that aren't familiar with that requires a little bit more time than just a common sense understanding we already have of the 5 bodily senses. And we can pretty easily imagine the mind, our emotional and intellectual experience and images that come from imagination and so on, all of that, we can kind of easily imagine that as being the domain of a 6th sense, if we want to call that the mind. That seems to be a lot more easy to understand and to grasp, require less thought. So I thought we would use that later in the meditation for investigation. And I was just kind of wanting to give a little bit of scriptural background for that. So we have this idea that we live, in the world of samsara, birth and death, and immediately that involves a story and a sense of existence as a self in a world, and that there's some possibility for liberation according to the teachings of the Buddha that involve the Vipassana insight into how that's all just a conventional reality that can be put aside. So, and I'll kind of return to that a little bit as I explore these guidelines that I got from Aung San Sayadaw's book on the teachings of Mogok Sayadaw, this well-known Burmese Vipassana teacher. So there are these 5. Now, okay, so the reason I'm bringing this up is that for the sake of experimentation today, we'll kind of accept the idea that Vipassana meditation is something that can be done in a way that's fundamentally different than how we approach and practice Samatha, tranquility meditation. We'll accept that for the day, if you like. And these are then 5 principles that would distinguish. So the second consideration, Samatha, fixes on concepts which do not really exist, while Vipassana observes the ultimate realities which really exist. Okay. Now I want to say something about that. Now the terms there, ultimate realities, that's actually an English translation for Paramata Dhammas. Oftentimes that's translated in English as ultimate realities. But that's an Abhidhamma term, the Paramata Dhammas. And I've read about this. It's not making a metaphysical statement, ultimate reality. What it's saying is, this is the irreducible reality of our experience. So there's a philosophical school called phenomenology. It's just the study of experience without making metaphysical statements about it. It's just the study of experience as it can be known. That's what this is. So people have argued about that and wondered about that. With this phrase, ultimate realities, is that a metaphysical statement? But we kind of know, in a general way, that Buddha didn't like to make metaphysical statements too much. But he wasn't ultimately effective phenomenologist. He studied his own experience. And so the people that I tend to believe on this is that ultimate realities means irreducible realities of our experience. So I'm kind of tying that in now with we deconstruct on the level of the five aggregates and the six senses in their fields, but at least something to keep in the back of your mind. In Abhidhamma, that's actually reduced down to the minutest degree of discrete moments of consciousness, rising and passing away at the rate of millions in the blink of an eye. Okay, so, but kind of an everyday way of looking at this, Samatha focuses on concepts. Okay, so if you think you're somebody and you have a body, then you can contemplate the body. Or if you think you're somebody who is breathing, you can contemplate your breath, etc. If you think there are people on the other side of the world that you want to send loving kindness to, you can do that. Those are all good things to do. And important, I think here, this teacher in this book, he mentioned that there are people who have criticized this school of Vipassana because they imagine that they're saying you shouldn't do Buddhist activities that operate more with conventional understanding, like generosity, Dhamma, or you shouldn't do activities that involve a conceptual framework of self and other and karma. He actually talks about karma. A lot of the Buddhist practices have to do with karma, understanding karma, how we create wholesome karma for the future, and lessen or eliminate unwholesome karma. So there's he's not denying the effectiveness of that, and that one shouldn't do that. He's just saying that you can do those things with wisdom. You can integrate this understanding into that. Do them both. And it's well that he does say that, because a lot of the Buddhist scriptures have to do with understanding karma, what's wholesome and unwholesome. So, if somebody didn't read the scriptures and just thought, I shouldn't think about that stuff at all, they'd be way off. Okay. I think I said most of what I wanted to say about that. And we can kind of switch over to the meditation part now, and just almost a half hour, 25 to 30 minutes now. Okay, so the first thing that I'm going to share with you is it'll be kind of a preparation for the Vipassana. I wouldn't say this is yet itself Vipassana, but it does occupy, or it does embody a couple of the ideas that I just discussed, in that you don't really choose the object. Some people would refer to this as being choiceless awareness. So you don't have a primary object. So just sit comfortably. If If you want to have your eyes open, you can, but I would encourage you not to look around the room much or get involved with objects. Maybe just keep them half open, downcast somewhat, or you can close your eyes. But in this kind of meditation, you're not trying to exclude anything. So the things that come to you through your senses, my voice, noises from other people, things like that, they aren't distractions because you're not focusing on one object. You're just observing what your mind does with whatever naturally comes in through your senses. Okay, so rather than to limit your attention to any particular area on the body, just be open to the entire body. And rather than limit the experience of your mind to any particular thing, just be open to whatever arises in the mind. So for a while, this will be kind of our way of entering into some calm while starting to embody kind of this choiceless, open gateway into Vipassana. Sit as quietly as you can, as still as you can, and just let your attention naturally be drawn to whatever continues to move in the body or the mind. Any movement that you sense in the body or in the mind, just let your attention naturally be drawn there. Accept and watch whatever it is as a witness, as if it belongs to somebody else. And we'll just spend a few minutes doing that. And now, while keeping that same basic approach, staying entirely open to your experience in body and mind, letting your attention be drawn naturally to wherever there's movement, add this one consideration. Sometimes to notice which of the 6 senses, the immediate, most noticeable object of experience, is occurring in. And just subtly note whether it's seeing, hearing, smelling, taste, touch, or just mind. Just take a minute or two in conclusion. Preparing to actively engage with the world of the senses again. please put your hands together and say sadhu 3 times. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Thank you very much. Have a good rest of the afternoon.